Hi there, I'm Dr. Jolene Brighten. I'm a leading expert in post-birth control syndrome, the long-term side effects and consequences associated with hormonal birth control that not all of us ladies get told about. And today I am chatting with Kat, who's going to share with us her birth control story. So welcome, Kat, and thank you for making the time to chat with me today.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Go ahead.
I'm 24 and I live in Indiana, and I am not on birth control anymore, but I was for several years and it was not pretty.
So I'm curious, could you back up and tell us in this story, like, why did you start birth control to begin with, and then what happened when you did?
Okay, I was in a serious relationship with a boy when I was 14, and my mom and I have a pretty open relationship, so I told her I was thinking about having sex, and she said, well, good, we should get birth control. And I said, okay. And then I was on the pill for several months, but I'm a little forgetful, so that wasn't the method for me. So in the summer of 2007, I got Implant in my arm, and that was like a 4-year thing. It was very painful to have put in, and then my period disappeared for like 8 months. And at 15 years old, I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Now I know that's not cool, really. So I was on that until the duration of how long it lasts. And a few months after being on it, I became seriously depressed. And it wasn't just because of like things going on in my life. It was like I was another person, and I didn't register to me that it was because of this stick in my arm. And at 15, I tried to kill myself, and I ended up in the hospital, and I was almost successful. I'm glad I wasn't. 9 years later now. So then I was told to take antidepressants, and I didn't, because I read the pamphlet for once and said that they were never tested on people younger than 18, and I was not 18.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I've already made enough lousy decisions so far. I'm going to say no to this. So I didn't take them, but I was still on the birth control. It was in my arm, and I was going to take it for the whole time. And then I saw another doctor and told him how I was feeling. I was obviously not in a good place. And he diagnosed me with Anhedonia, which is inability to receive pleasure from anything. That's what he told me at 16, which was very disheartening. And I knew I liked some stuff, like I like to eat. But none of these things are problems now. Every day is happy for me, so don't be sad. But after being on that for several years, I gained like 20 pounds, and I'm 5'1", so that is not a small amount of weight.
No.
And I dated a slew of men and slept with a slew of men that really didn't need to do that. It was like I was in a fog, and I only know that now that I'm out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's, what's interesting about your story is that, we now know with a research study that was published in 2016 that teenage girls are especially susceptible to these hormonal contraceptives, triggering, 3 times the risk of suicide. And so we could have used that research a long time ago. But in addition to that, we are attracted to the wrong kind of man. Like, we definitely are attracted to the wrong kind of man. And now we're starting to understand, with more research coming out, that not only do we get attracted to the wrong kind of man, but we participate in highly risky behavior.
Yes.
And we get addicted to things really easily when we're on the phone. So drugs, sex, alcohol, fill in the blank, eating disorders are definitely something that come up as well. Because, the other thing is that before age 25, like, your brain really hasn't finished developing. And now you're bringing in drugs that are disrupting the brain. And that, truly, hormonal contraceptives are a drug. And we forget that because they're so ubiquitous. So did you end up leaving the implant in for the full 4 years?
Yeah, I did.
And then what happened when you had it removed?
It is still in my arm.
Oh, wow.
I'm not able to get it taken out because I don't have health insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But I was told by several doctors that it's like not doing anything now. It is 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives me a little bit of peace of mind. I also have regular periods, and I didn't for a long time. I've been tracking my cycles for like the past 2 years, and I know that they're regular, and I don't have PMS or anything, and I used to really bad.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what it's doing in my arm now, but
Can I just say, like, that is just not right, that in this day and age that a doctor can place an implant in your arm, and then because you don't have health insurance, you're stuck and you have
yeah,
to leave that there. Like, how is it 2018 and we are not doing better in women's medicine for that?
I
Like,
know.
everybody's bickering over, like, oh my gosh, like, should Planned Parenthood be allowed to operate and help women? Well, Planned Parenthood helps a lot of women, and it's not,
Mm-hmm.
so many people will say, oh, it's just an abortion place. Like, that's where I got all my paps when I was in college, because I
Yeah.
didn't have insurance to be able to do that. And so
Mm-hmm.
that I'm outraged. I'm like, that should not be a thing, that a
I know.
doctor can put that in your arm without some kind of social responsibility to make sure to remove that. 10 years, like, that
I
is
know.
something that, like, you're like, I don't want to be scaring you, but there's going to be, possibility of adhesions, that it's going to be really difficult to have that removed. Like, your body's going to be
Mm-hmm.
like, all right, this is what we're doing now. And
Yeah.
where are the long-term studies on not taking that out of your
None.
arm, and what happens? So what if the hormones have stopped? You have foreign entity in your arm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting kind of pissed off here that this should
I
not.
am too.
Gosh.
I was ready to have it cut out by someone that barely knew what they were doing. Like, I
Yeah,
want it out.
totally. And so after those 4 years, like, did
Mhm.
you notice shifts in your mood? Like, when is it that your mood started to come back? Like, that you were like,
Um,
oh, I'm me again.
oh, I was dating this total loser for 3 years and pretty much just crying every day. And then one day I woke up and I was like, I can do so much better than this. I felt like garbage for years. I like maybe thin now, but that doesn't make me feel any better. Um, and I started like eating a lot better. My mom became a naturopath around that time, so she helped me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't even know that it was from the birth control at that point. I just thought that I was sad.
Mm-hmm. Well, and of course, I mean, you're going to doctors and they're like, well, you just need antidepressants because,
Yeah,
you're just inherently broken as a woman as it is.
yeah.
Like, there's a pill for that. When in reality, it's
Mhm,
like, why can't you just follow the timeline? Like, she had an implant and then she became depressed, but it's even in the package insert that depression is a thing, but
mhm.
still doctors are so quick to be like, no, no, there's a pill for that.
And when you're 14, it's not like you're like, let me do some research. Like,
Mm-hmm. Well, plus, like,
um,
the internet. I mean, I talk about, like, there's so much I didn't realize. Like, I struggled with depression on the birth control pill. Like, I
mhm.
was debilitated. They switched my pill, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, wait, I'm not crying every day in the shower and unable to leave my house. And, like, back then it was like you went to the library. Like, there was no internet to
Yeah,
look things up. Like, we're
yeah,
in a very different time right now. I mean, you're sitting in Indiana and I'm sitting in Oregon and we're having a
yeah.
conversation. This was not a thing 10 years ago.
No. And I wouldn't have heard stories from other women.
Yeah.
My friends probably wouldn't have wanted to tell me, and no one really wanted to talk about it anyway.
Well, and that's the other thing we're seeing. And that's something that I'm really trying to spur with these interviews is like,
Mhm.
let's stop suffering silently. Let's stop being ashamed because,
Yes.
what we are going through, so many women are going through. And it's really, it's been through my Instagram account that I've come to realize, like, so many women are shamed, struggling
Mhm.
alone, believing they're broken. And it's once they hear another woman's story that they're like, wait, it happened to
Yeah.
you too. And what's being reinforced in so many of them is healthcare practitioners are saying, like, no, I know that you're saying this isn't normal for you, but I'm telling you it's not possible because
Yeah.
this research study said it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, why are we
Yeah.
believing research studies over the woman who's sitting in front of us? This makes no sense. This is not why we all got into medicine.
Yeah, exactly.
So for
And people
you,
know themselves the best.
absolutely. Like, you were like, wait a minute, I was fine. I got this implant. Now I'm not fine. And so
Yeah.
you started taking steps to change your diet. So it sounds a lot like, after the implant, that's the tricky thing is that I'll meet with women and they still have the implant and they're like, well, it's 5, 6 years, but they're still experiencing post-birth control syndrome after those
Oh.
hormones are wearing off. And, you know, big part of that is starting to change the diet, making lifestyle changes. And it sounds like you were taking those steps. And I just want to highlight that because they don't just go away. Like these side effects and
I
symptoms
worked really hard at it.
yeah. And so, well, one, we want to honor you for that. But two, women who are watching this and listening, I want them to understand that, like, yes, in fact, like you do have to take steps to be able to get your life back. And it isn't something, you know, so often doctors will say to women, well, just stop birth control and you'll be fine. And then post-birth control syndrome happens and their doctor's like, oh, well, there's a new drug for that. Oh, you have acne. Let's get you some Accutane. Oh, you have depression, anxiety. Let's get you some Xanax. Like you're not sleeping now. Oh, your periods are very heavy or they're gone. Let's just get you another form of birth control. And it's a big disservice that's being done to women.
I agree. And I took a lot of steps on my own. Almost because I didn't have health insurance, I was really on my own in that department. And I did a lot of trial and error. It was like a giant experiment.
Yeah. But you know, that's the way you get to like your user manual. And this is something I talk about to patients in my medical clinic is like, there is no one size fits all user manual. You have to figure out your user manual for life, and your threshold for things are going to be different. I mean, it's just so different for all of us. So I'm curious, when did you find my work and how did you stumble upon me?
I listened to a ton of JJ Virgin's podcasts in the fall, and your episode was like really stuck out in my mind. I'm like, post-birth control syndrome, this is my life.
Yeah.
And many other women that I know too. And it never had a name. It's just like, it was just maybe you're broken. Yeah, like it runs in your family. Your mom was depressed, now you're depressed. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, you know, what's funny about that is not a lot of people know JJ she's a very good friend and she's a mentor to me. And I actually had years ago said like, you know, here's my work that I do. And I work a lot with thyroid and hormones. And I just mentioned like, oh, and I have all these protocols for post-birth control syndrome that all these women come to me for. And I need to make like an online program or something because I can't help all these women. And she was like, wait, what are you talking about? I'm like, post-birth control syndrome. Like, and she's like, what is that? I've never heard that. And she was actually the one who pushed me in so many ways and was like, you have to get this message out. She was one of the first podcasts I ever did about this because she was like, oh my God, I know so many women with this. Like, why are you not screaming this from the rooftops? And I'm like,
I started once I heard that podcast.
yeah. And I'm like, I have no idea. And it was something that like, I was standing in the middle of the room. There was like 40 people hearing me talk about this. And she was like, you are so passionate and so fired up about this. I've never heard this before. She's like, you're the first doctor that I've ever seen talking about this. Like, you need to go talk about it. And I'm like, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm like, well, it's kind of scary because I am the first doctor talking about it. And I remember what they said about doctors when like adrenal fatigue and leaky gut, and they were like, you're crazy. And like,
it's not real.
Yeah, it's not real. Throw them under the bus. And then I just was like, you know what? Cares to the wind. If I've got to be the one that goes out there and burns for women, then so be it, because we have to talk about this. And it's just, there's just too many of us that have gone through this that haven't been helped. And thank goodness, I mean, for the generations that have gone before us, that like, I mean, we're seeing women who've been on birth control for 30 years.
Yeah.
There's no research study looking at that. And in fact, there's research studies saying you shouldn't be on it past age 35. But like, they still give it out to women in their 40s, women in their 50s without
people with acne for no reason.
Absolutely. So that's so funny that you found me on JJ Virgin, because I'm like, she's actually been a huge catalyst, and she will check in with me and be like, you need to be out there. You need to be speaking this truth more. So that's fantastic. And then we connected on Instagram and you were sharing your story with me, which is when I was like, whoa, you have to share this. Like, we have to get this out to women, because so many women have gone through exactly what you have gone through. I mean, I had friends who, I remember a girlfriend of mine in high school who secretly got on birth control because she didn't want her parents to know. And then the next thing I knew, she was calling me and she's like, I took a bottle full of painkillers and I don't see her anymore. And I was at the hospital, like, and her parents were like, how did you know? And did you guys, it was this weird thing. And I'm like, she called me and she said, this is what she was going to do. And I called you guys and said like, hey, like, I'm worried about her. And it's only something now that like 20 years later, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She had secretly, and her parents probably still to this day don't even know that she had started the birth control pill like just a couple months before that. And I didn't tell them because, you know, I was like, this is my friend, it's not my place. But, you know, only now as like my adult self and being a mom, I'm like, oh my gosh, like we need to know this about our children. And I'm so grateful that you and your mom had that open relationship that like, that's not something I had with my mom. When I got on hormones, I definitely hid that from my mom as well.
So she did for her mom. So she changed it when I came around.
Totally. I mean, and that's so important to have like your mother as an ally in this, and the fact that she went on and educated herself that she could help you more. I mean, you're just so lucky, like, to have a mom like that.
I am. I could still be struggling with all of those symptoms.
Yeah, totally. So I'm, you know, in all of this, is there anything that you found that was like super helpful for you or like a game changer in any way?
I started eating more meat. And that changed a lot of things for me, actually. In August, I adopted like pretty much a carnivorous diet, which is pretty, a small group of people that are doing that. But the last symptoms I had left over was acne that was so persistent, even on a clean paleo diet. It got worse and worse and worse, and I wasn't having sugar. I wasn't drinking. I quit smoking cigarettes, and it was still getting worse. So my mom said, I started eating a lot more meat, and I feel better. And I was like, well, I'll try anything.
Yeah.
It did. My skin cleared up immediately, and it stayed clear. And I used to have incredibly tender breasts before my period, like for 10 days before. And I was really concerned about that because I know that's probably not good. And that went away in like 3 months. And my cycles became regular. You know, they would be right after the stick, like its expiration date ended, I would bleed 3 times a month.
Oh my gosh.
And that was really frightening because at that point I knew this is not good. I wasn't 15 anymore. I'm a woman and I know this is not good.
Yeah. And that's a common part of post-birth control syndrome is to be like, you know, your period can go away altogether, or you're like, I'm always having my period. I don't know when it's coming.
Yeah. And then I even went to a doctor about that because I had health insurance at that point, and she said that it was just an irregular period. And I said, I know that. Tell me why. No one told me why, so I stopped going to that person. And eating a lot of meat, exercising, which I didn't really used to do before. And now I'm in a relationship with a great guy who takes care of me, and that helps a lot. Yeah. And my mom, all of her knowledge has really helped, but you can't just go out and get a mom like mine.
That's true. But it sounds, you know, that piece of including more protein in the diet is very telling. So as part of post-birth control syndrome, we can see the androgen rebound, so the acne, oily skin that just doesn't go away. And blood sugar balance is definitely very, very helpful. And so exercising, you're increasing your skeletal muscle, you're changing your metabolism, and then you're bringing in more protein. And the other thing about animal source protein is that, you know, these hormonal contraceptives deplete B12. And so B12 is going to affect your whole nervous system, and it's going to make you feel fatigued at the cellular level. I mean, your cells can't even make energy without these B vitamins. But in taking in meat, you're actually replenishing B vitamins, iron, you know, depending on the meats that you're eating, you're also, you know, getting like good, healthy fats coming in as well. And so that does a whole lot to shift and change our hormones. And it's interesting you say that because and I love that you say that because so often women will say, well, I'm just going to do a vegan diet, and then that way my acne will go away. And I've seen acne actually get a whole lot worse on a vegan diet. And it comes down to that blood sugar dysregulation, the types of fats that you're eating. So that was a really helpful tip for you to share. I'm sure there's some women taking notes right now on that.
I hope so.
For women who are watching and listening and, you know, who are questioning whether or not their symptoms are real, is there anything you'd like to share with them?
Listen to your body every day and don't stop listening, because you know more than anyone. And don't let someone tell you that you're not going to receive pleasure from anything in life, because that does nothing for you. And watch what you put in your body. Even birth control, food, alcohol, anything. It changes you for the better or for the worse. And you know, once you start paying attention, you'll know.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I think as women, we have an intuition about life, but in knowing about our bodies. And that's really something that medicine's done a big disservice, is telling us that your doctor knows better, that your health practitioner knows better. And there's no way, because you don't have a medical degree, that you can know that much about your body. And that's just false. And that's something that in my medical practice, I do very different, all like exactly what you said. My patients from day one are given a journal, and I'm like, I need you to track all this data, because there's no amount of lab tests in the world that can give me the data that you have just by knowing you and knowing yourself. Well, thank you so much, Kat. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, to share your story. It's going to help so many women. I'm just so grateful for you.
I'm grateful for you. Are you kidding? Thank you. And happy belated Mother's Day.
Oh, thank you. Yes, and you give your mama a big hug, because she sounds like a badass.
She sure is.